Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere loud, dirty, and a little too wired for comfort. A time when victory was measured in inches, survival was counted by hours, and staying awake wasn't a choice, it was an order. We're diving into what life was really like for an American soldier in World War II when amphetamines were handed out like breath mints. Forget the Hollywood hero shots of clean uniforms, noble speeches, and smooth orchestral scores. The truth is, you'd be lucky to last a single day without either collapsing from exhaustion or vibrating yourself into an early grave. So before you settle in, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and how late it is for you, because it's always interesting to see who's awake for this kind of thing. Dim the lights, maybe get a fan going for some background hum, and let's ease into the noise together. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1944. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, you're somewhere in Europe, wearing a uniform that smells like damp dog and diesel fumes. The air tastes like burnt coffee and mud. Somewhere out in the distance, artillery is thudding, not enough to shake the ground, but enough to remind you it's there. You're lying in something that could generously be called a bed, but is really just a rolled up blanket on a patch of ground that's either frozen solid or soaked straight through. The last thing you remember before closing your eyes was someone shouting "lights out" in a voice that sounded more like "don't die." Now, after what might have been 3 hours of unconsciousness, you're being told to get up again. Not politely, not with a gentle nudge, but with a kick or the sound of someone yanking a rifle off the floor and clattering it against a helmet. You're not waking up in a warm barracks with clean sheets and soft morning light. You're waking up in a place where yesterday's mud has frozen to your jacket, where the air inside your lungs feels colder than the air outside them, and where every single part of you already hurts before the day has even started. There's no time to stretch, no time to collect your thoughts. No time to even figure out what day it is. The war doesn't care about your circadian rhythm. Someone's already barking orders, and the unspoken part of those orders is simple. If you move slow, you're making yourself and everyone else a target. Your muscles feel heavy, but your head feels like it's buzzing. Not because you're awake yet, but because you know what's coming next. The pills. They're in a little tin, maybe rattling in a pouch, maybe already in the hand of the guy next to you. Benzedrine, the military's way of telling you to stay awake, stay sharp, and keep moving even when your body is screaming for a break. You haven't eaten yet, your boots aren't laced, and you've still got mud under your nails from yesterday's trench digging, but none of that matters. The war doesn't run on comfort. It runs on adrenaline, caffeine, and enough amphetamines to keep a small town awake for a week. The sound of metal canteens clinking, rifles being checked, and someone coughing hard enough to pull a muscle fills the air. Your uniform is stiff. Your hands are already numb, and there's a taste in your mouth like you chewed on a burnt match. Somewhere behind you, someone's grumbling about the coffee, and somewhere ahead, someone's already lighting a cigarette like it's the only thing keeping them from collapsing. You're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're not thinking about strategy, politics, or history. You're thinking about one thing, making it through the next hour without falling over. And the truth is, that's not really up to you anymore. You're not waking up because you're rested. You're waking up because someone else decided it's time to move. There's no alarm clock with a friendly chime, no soft sunlight streaming through a window. Just a voice outside the tent flap. Or maybe no tent at all, yelling something short and sharp that could be a command, a curse, or both. The sound blends with the clatter of metal and the muffled thump of boots stomping through mud. You're still in that half sleep, where your brain is trying to convince you it's a bad dream, but your body already knows the truth. Your blanket, or what passes for one, is damp. It smells like a mix of mildew, sweat, and the faint chemical tang of whatever spilled on it last night. The ground underneath is either frozen so hard your hip bones feel bruised, or it's turned to muck so deep you can feel moisture soaking through your clothes without even moving. You shift a little and immediately regret it, because any movement pulls cold air into whatever heat you manage to trap during the night. It's the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache even when your mouth is closed. You can hear the guy next to you breathing heavy, not from comfort, but from the congestion that half the platoon has been carrying for weeks. Coughs are just part of the soundtrack now, as normal as rifle bolts clicking or distant artillery rumbling like a storm that never stops. Someone's already swearing about their boots, probably because they froze solid overnight. You start to take inventory of your own gear in your head before you even sit up. Rifle, hopefully dry. Boots, somewhere near your feet. Helmet, should still be where you left it unless someone kicked it. But first, the pills. You don't even think about whether you want them anymore. Want has nothing to do with it. This isn't about pulling an all-nighter to cram for a test, or finishing some project back home. This is about staying awake, because falling asleep anywhere outside of a dug-in position could mean not waking up at all. The small Benzedrine tablet is already in your hand before your eyes are fully open. There's no ceremony, no checking the time. You pop it dry, wash it down with whatever's left in your canteen, and brace yourself for that creeping buzz to crawl into your head and start pushing your brain into overdrive. The military calls it alertness. You call it the point where your heartbeat starts tapping faster than your footsteps. Your thoughts sharpen in a way that feels like clarity, but there's always that edge of something else, like your body knows it's not natural. Your hands feel a little quicker. Your jaw sets a little tighter. Your eyes stop fighting to stay open, but your muscles still complain. That's fine. They'll warm up when you start moving. At least, that's what you tell yourself. Someone outside is handing out coffee in dented tin cups. Calling it coffee is generous. It's more like burnt water that's been run through the same grounds 3 times. But it's hot and it's something in your stomach before you have to move. You grab yours and hold it like it's a hand warmer, because it might be the last heat you feel for hours. The steam carries the smell of stale grounds, mixed with the faint scent of fuel from whatever they used to boil it. You sip, and it's bitter enough to make your eyes water, but that's good. Now you're awake whether you want to be or not. Next comes the layering ritual, if you can call it that. You're already wearing yesterday's uniform, because changing clothes in the field isn't a luxury anyone bothers with, unless they're trying to shake off lice or dry something soaked through. You just throw your jacket back on, fingers fumbling with stiff buttons, and hope the mud crusted on the sleeves keeps some wind out. You check your pockets automatically, making sure your spare ammo clips are where you left them. Your matches are dry, and the few personal things you carry, maybe a letter from home or a photo, haven't vanished. The boots are next. If they're wet, you just shove your feet in and wince. If they're frozen, you might have to bang them against something to break the ice loose. You've got socks on, but calling them clean would be a lie. They've been damp for days, maybe longer, and they smell like something that could qualify as a biological weapon. You shove your feet in anyway, because it's either that or risk frostbite. And frostbite means you're not marching. Not marching means you're falling behind. Falling behind means you're putting someone else in danger. Around you, everyone's doing the same thing. No one's talking much yet. It's too early for conversation, and besides, the mood doesn't invite small talk. The only sounds are the scrape of boots, the snap of straps being buckled, the occasional muttered curse when something doesn't fit right. Someone drops their helmet and it hits the ground with a dull clang. Someone else lights up a cigarette, and the faint sulphur smell of the match mixes with the damp air. You sling your rifle over your shoulder and feel the weight settle in, familiar and heavy. It's not just a weapon, it's your insurance policy. You keep it close, not because you're expecting to use it in the next 5 minutes, but because the moment you don't have it will be the moment you need it. Your fingers check the safety, then rest along the stock. The metal is cold enough to make your skin sting. By now the pill is doing its work. You can feel your pulse in your ears, like a steady drumbeat that's just a little too fast. The cold doesn't feel quite as sharp. Your mind is awake, but it's a strange kind of awake, like your thoughts are stacked on top of each other. Instead of flowing in a straight line, you're ready to move, even if your body still aches from yesterday's march. And you will move, whether you want to or not. Orders start coming down the line. Where you're going, how far, what you're carrying. It's never short, it's never light, and it's never optional. You just nod, even if you're not entirely sure you caught all the details. That's part of the rhythm now. You do what you're told because stopping to ask questions is a waste of breath. You'll figure it out when you get there, or you won't, and you'll keep moving anyway. The line starts forming, soldiers stepping into place with the kind of resigned coordination that only comes from repetition. You fall in, tightening your straps and pulling your jacket collar higher against the wind. The air smells like damp earth, exhaust from a nearby truck, and the faint metallic tang of the ammo someone's loading a few steps away. You take another sip of coffee, finish it in 2 gulps, and toss the last few drops onto the ground. Somewhere ahead, the sound of an engine coughing to life mixes with the low murmur of voices. Someone laughs, but it's short and rough. The kind of laugh that's more about breaking the silence than actually finding something funny. Your boots sink slightly into the ground with each step as the column starts moving. You're not thinking about the end of the day yet. You're not thinking about the next town, the next fight, or the next time you'll get to sleep. Right now, it's just about keeping your feet moving one after the other until someone tells you to stop. The pill keeps you sharp enough to notice every detail. The way your breath hangs in the air, the click of gear against metal, the way the straps on your pack dig into your shoulders. But it also keeps you from feeling the full weight of how tired you actually are. That's the trick. You're not less exhausted, you're just too wired to care. And that's exactly what the army wants. Sleep is technically something you're supposed to be getting every day. That's what the manuals say. That's what the medical officers say. That's what your body has been screaming for since you got off the transport. In reality, sleep in this war is like good coffee. Everyone talks about it, but no one actually gets any. You don't have nights anymore. You have stretches of darkness where you might be horizontal for a while, but it's not rest, it's an intermission. A short, jittery pause between one thing that might kill you and the next. They told you back home that the army runs on discipline and structure. Out here, it runs on whatever moments you can grab without getting yelled at, shot at, or stepped on. Sometimes that's 3 hours. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, leaning against a wall while someone else keeps watch. It's never enough. And your body knows it. Every joint feels heavier than it should. Your eyes burn like you've been staring into the sun. Your thoughts slow down until the only thing keeping you upright is the chemical tap on the shoulder from those little white tablets. The pill makes it easier to keep going, but it doesn't replace actual sleep. It just blurs the edges of exhaustion so you don't notice how bad it's gotten. You can be standing there, eyes open, rifle in your hands, hearing every sound, and still feel like part of you is somewhere else, floating just above your head, waiting for you to finally crash. Except you don't crash, not properly. You just tip over in tiny increments until the next order or noise drags you back up again. If you're lucky enough to actually lie down, it's never on something comfortable. The ground is the most common option. It might be frozen hard enough to feel like stone, or soft enough that you slowly sink into the mud as you drift off. You keep your gear close because you're not stupid. A rifle left even a foot too far away could end up in someone else's hands by morning, and there's no faster way to make an officer's voice hit the pitch of a dentist's drill. Your blanket, if you even have one, is already damp by the time you wrap it around yourself. That dampness isn't going away. It's part of you now, like the smell of smoke and sweat that clings to your jacket. You curl up as best you can, knees pulled in, helmet tipped forward over your face to keep the wind off. You might get a few minutes before something breaks the silence. Gunfire in the distance, a truck grinding its gears, a shout from somewhere down the line. It's not enough to fully wake you, but it's enough to make sure you're not getting back to that deeper kind of sleep your body actually needs. When you do dream, it's not peaceful. Your brain doesn't get the memo that you're supposed to be resting. It plays back the same things you've been looking at all day. Mud, smoke, flashes of light, the way the trees sway in the wind when the ground shakes from artillery. Sometimes you're back home, sitting at a kitchen table or walking down a street you used to know. Sometimes it's a mix of both, like you're carrying your rifle into a grocery store or trying to take cover behind your mother's stove. Either way, you wake up with the same pounding in your head and the same taste of iron and stale coffee in your mouth. And just because you're supposed to be sleeping doesn't mean you're allowed to actually relax. Someone is always on watch. If it's your turn, you sit up in the dark, eyes scanning the tree line or the edges of the street, listening for anything out of place. If it's not your turn, you try to rest, knowing that the guy next to you is just as tired and wired as you are, running on the same pills and the same thin thread of focus. The pill makes you feel awake enough to stand and walk, but it also makes your head buzz like there's a swarm of bees behind your eyes. That's fine when you're marching or digging or loading, but when you're trying to sleep, it's a curse. Your body is desperate to shut down, but your brain is doing laps. You start thinking about everything. What time it is, how far you've marched, whether your boots will survive another week, whether you will. You think about home, about the people you haven't heard from, about the ones who haven't heard from you. And before you can settle on one thought long enough to drift off, someone's kicking your boot or calling your name, and it's time to move again. Even when you get what feels like a long stretch, 3 or 4 hours without interruption, it's not the kind of sleep that fixes anything. You don't wake up refreshed. You wake up sore, stiff, and somehow more tired than before. Your body doesn't get to go through all the stages it's supposed to. It just dips in and out, grabbing what it can, before another noise pulls you up to the surface. The pills keep you from feeling it in the moment, but you know it's stacking up in the background. That deep, dragging exhaustion that makes every step a little harder, every reaction a little slower, every thought a little foggier. By the time you're standing in line again, gear strapped on, coffee cup in hand, you can't remember the last time you actually slept like a normal human being. Not a soldier, not a body in a uniform, but a person in a bed with a pillow and a blanket that wasn't damp. You try not to think about it, because there's no point. You're not getting that here. The best you can hope for is another 1/4 inch of sleep the next time you're given a chance, and even that's not guaranteed. And as you take another sip of bitter coffee, feeling the pill start to kick in again, you know that's just how it's going to be until someone tells you the war is over. You don't sit down for breakfast in this war. You hover, you stand, you lean on whatever's nearby that isn't already covered in mud or something worse. The idea of a morning meal being a calm, social thing is a memory from a different lifetime. Out here it's fuel, and not the good kind. It's whatever's available, whatever's left, and whatever they can heat up without drawing too much attention. The coffee you already choked down wasn't really part of breakfast. It was the prelude, the thing you swallow just to start functioning enough to find the rest of it. The main act is rations. Sometimes that means K-rations in their little waxed cardboard boxes. Sometimes it's a C-ration can that looks like it was packed during the last war. Either way, the contents aren't designed for pleasure. They're designed for calorie density and shelf life that could probably outlast the conflict itself. You pry open the box or the can with whatever you've got. Sometimes it's a knife. Sometimes it's the edge of a helmet if you're desperate. Inside, you might find biscuits so hard you could drive nails with them. They're officially called crackers, but that's just the polite word for compressed sawdust with a hint of flour. You try to soften them with a splash of that bitter coffee, but mostly you just gnaw until your jaw starts to ache. If you're lucky, there's a little tin of processed cheese spread. It's more orange than yellow, more glue than dairy, but it makes the biscuit slide down easier. Then there's the meat component, if you can call it that. Canned meat hash, spam-like bricks, or something labelled pork and beans, where the beans are outnumbered by a thin orange liquid that smells faintly of smoke and regret. You eat it cold if you have to. Hot if someone's managed to get a fire going without catching unwanted attention. Hot helps, but it doesn't fix the fact that you're chewing something that tastes like it was cooked in another country and shipped over here by accident. On special mornings, if the supply lines are in your favour and the quartermaster isn't in a mood, you might get a small packet of powdered eggs. These aren't eggs in the way you remember them. They're eggs in theory. Yellow dust you mix with water until it becomes something lumpy and vaguely breakfast-shaped. You eat them quickly, not because they're good, but because they cool fast and become a texture you don't want to think about while still chewing. Sugar, when it shows up, comes in tiny paper packets. You guard those like treasure. They're not for sweetening things so much as for reminding you sweetness exists. You might dump one straight into your mouth just to cut through the taste of canned meat. Chocolate bars sometimes make it into the rations too, though by the time they reach you, they're often white and crumbly from the temperature swings. You eat them anyway, because the idea of chocolate is almost as good as the reality at this point. And then there's the cigarettes. They're not officially food, but they're as much a part of breakfast as anything else. Every ration pack seems to have them. The brand doesn't matter. They all taste the same. Dry, harsh, with a bite that sticks to the back of your throat. You light one, take a drag, and for a few minutes, the taste of stale biscuits and lukewarm beans fades under the burn of smoke. The cigarette is less about enjoyment and more about ritual. Something steady in a day that's going to be anything but. You eat standing up, balancing your can or your tin cup in one hand while the other works a fork, or just scoops food out with whatever utensil you can find. You're surrounded by the same sounds you woke up to. Boots in the mud, gear clinking, men clearing their throats or coughing into their sleeves. Conversations are low and clipped. No one's swapping stories at home over toast. The talk is about the day's orders, the weather, the state of someone's rifle. Sometimes you don't even finish what you're given. Not because you're full. No one's full. But because there's no time. Someone shouts that it's time to move, and you're packing the rest back into your kit, planning to eat it cold later if you get the chance. More often than not, you forget about it until you find it 3 days later, flattened in the bottom of your bag, and tasting like canvas. And while you're swallowing that last bite, you're aware that the pill you took earlier is starting to hit its stride. Your stomach isn't happy about it. Amphetamines and canned pork aren't the most natural pairing, but your brain doesn't care. Your pulse is up, your eyes feel sharp, and the dull fog from the night's half-sleep is thinning out. You can feel your legs getting restless, like they're ready to start moving even if you're not. Breakfast isn't satisfying. It's not meant to be. It's a transaction, calories for compliance. You eat so you can march so you can work so you can survive another day. There's no savouring it, no sense of reward. Just one more thing to get through before the real part of the day starts. The part where you're carrying everything you own into whatever's waiting for you beyond the tree line or the next ruined street. By the time the tins are empty and the cigarette butts are crushed into the mud, the line is forming again. You fall in with the rest, adjusting the straps on your pack, shifting your rifle into place, and stepping into that steady shuffle that's going to carry you through the next stretch. The coffee taste lingers in your mouth, the pill hum is in your veins, and breakfast is already behind you. Now comes the part where the army cashes in on the energy it just gave you. If breakfast was the fuel, this is the ignition switch. You've already taken one pill to get moving, but this is where it becomes official. Someone's walking down the line, not with a tray of eggs or anything warm, but with a pouch, a tin, or a little cardboard box full of the army's favourite shortcut, Benzedrine. The nickname changes depending on who you ask. Go pills, pep pills, beans, whites, but they all do the same thing. They flip the switch in your head from dragging yourself through the mud to marching like the road owes you money. It's not ceremonial. There's no speech about why you're getting them, no medical officer giving a warning about dosage. You just stick out your hand and catch the tablet when it drops. It's small enough to disappear between your fingers, chalky enough to leave a faint dust on your skin. You swallow it with a gulp from your canteen, maybe chasing the taste with the last of your coffee if you still have any left. Nobody asks if you've already had one today. Nobody tracks how many you've taken this week. The unspoken rule is simple. If you're standing, you can work. If you can work, you take the pill. Within 15-20 minutes, the shift happens. The stiffness in your legs doesn't matter as much. The ache in your shoulders feels smaller. Your eyes stop dragging at the edges. You feel like you could walk faster, talk faster, think faster. It's not euphoria, not here, not with what's ahead, but it's enough of a boost to make you believe you can get through the next few hours without falling over. That's the hook. It doesn't make you less tired. It just makes you not care that you're tired. Some guys get loud on it. They start talking more, making little jokes, bouncing on their heels as they wait to move. Others get quiet, eyes darting like they're counting every step before it happens. You see hands tapping against rifles, fingers drumming against ammo pouches. You feel your own jaw working more than usual, teeth pressing together without you meaning to. The army doesn't talk about side effects. Nobody's bringing up the fact that your heart rate's higher than it should be, or that your hands might start shaking by midday. You're not being told what happens if you take these day after day for weeks on end, or what the crash feels like when you finally stop. This isn't about health. This is about keeping bodies moving in one direction for as long as it takes. And as long as the pills do that, everything else is a problem for later. You can't deny they work though. Marching feels less like a chore. The mud doesn't seem as deep. The cold doesn't seem as sharp. The pack on your back doesn't feel like it's trying to fold your spine in half. You start to notice small details again. The sound of the gravel under boots. The way the air smells when the wind shifts. The outline of buildings on the horizon. It's almost like you're back in your own head instead of stuck in that dull grey tunnel where everything blurs together. But there's a cost. By mid-morning, your mouth is dry enough that the water in your canteen tastes better than anything you had for breakfast. Your stomach feels unsettled, like it's not sure whether it's supposed to digest or just keep vibrating in place. Your thoughts move quickly, but not always in a straight line. You catch yourself replaying little things in your head. Something someone said yesterday. The sound of a bullet cracking past your ear last week. The exact colour of the mud you stepped in this morning. The pill gives you energy, but it doesn't give you focus. That's on you. You know the officers are taking them too. You can see it in the way they move, the way they talk just a little faster when giving orders, the way their eyes don't quite stop scanning, even when nothing's happening. This isn't a secret weapon for the rank and file. It's the whole machine. From the guy carrying the radio to the one deciding where you march next. Everyone's chewing the same bitter little promise that they'll get through the day without dropping. Sometimes the timing works out so that you get another one before the first has even worn off. That's when things start to get strange. The hum in your head gets louder, your hands can't seem to stay still, and the hours start stretching and shrinking in ways that don't make sense. A 20-minute break feels like 5. A half-mile march feels like 2. You lose track of how long you've been moving, and by the time someone calls for a stop, you're surprised you're not somewhere completely different. And you can't stop thinking about the fact that this is normal now. Back home, you wouldn't touch something like this unless you had a doctor's note. Out here, It's just part of the routine, like cleaning your rifle or rolling your blanket. Nobody calls it addiction. Nobody calls it dependency. You call it getting through the day without dropping face first into the mud. The line keeps moving. Boots slap against the ground in a steady rhythm. The guy in front of you has a cigarette burning low between his fingers, and the smoke drifts back into your face. You don't mind. It gives your brain something else to lock onto besides the thud of your heartbeat in your ears. You're alert, ready, restless, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you know this energy isn't really yours. But you use it anyway, because out here, there's no such thing as saving it for later. And as the next hill rises in front of you and the column keeps climbing, you can feel it. Today's dose is fully in your system, carrying you forward whether you want to keep going or not. The pills have you moving, but now you've got to wrestle yourself into the full uniform and gear load like you're suiting up for the most uncomfortable marathon on Earth. You're already wearing most of it, because in the field, stripping down is a luxury you can't afford. Taking off your jacket to get comfortable just means you'll be scrambling to put it back on when the wind picks up, or someone starts yelling to move. But every morning, there's still some amount of adjusting, tightening, strapping, and swearing to get everything into place before the day's march, or whatever they've got planned for you. The uniform itself is heavy even before you add the rest of the gear. The wool shirt itches in ways that make you want to claw at your own skin, but you keep it because it's one of the few things between you and the cold. Over that, the field jacket, stiff from rain, caked with dirt, stained from things you'd rather not identify. It's got that damp smell that never quite goes away, the combination of sweat, mildew, and the faint tang of whatever the last guy carrying it spilled down the front. Your trousers are thick and coarse, the knees already wearing thin from hours crouched in mud or crawling over rough ground. They hang heavy when they're wet, which is most of the time. You've got suspenders digging into your shoulders under the jacket, straps you can't seem to adjust in a way that doesn't either cut off your circulation or let the trousers slide halfway down. The boots are the real prize in this ensemble. Leather so stiff it could stand up on its own, already warped from too many days of being soaked and then drying out in the wrong shape. The seams dig into your ankles. The soles are just thick enough to make you think they'll protect you until you step on a rock the size of a walnut and feel it like you're barefoot. The laces are never the right length, too short to tie properly if you cross them tight, too long if you leave them loose. You've got socks inside, but they've been damp since last week, and your toes feel like they're wrapped in cold clay. Then comes the web gear. Belt loaded with pouches for ammunition, grenades if you've got them, a canteen hanging at your hip that swings against your leg with every step, a bayonet strapped somewhere that always seems to jab you in the ribs when you bend down. Your entrenching tool, basically a small shovel, rides on the back, ready to smack you in the spine every time you hit a bump in the road. The straps cross over your chest, pulling at your shoulders, making it impossible to take a deep breath without feeling like the whole setup is trying to crush you. Over all that, you've got your pack. It's not enormous by modern hiking standards, but it's heavy enough that you can feel the weight in your knees before you've even started walking. Inside, there's everything you can't leave behind. Spare socks you'll probably never get to change into, extra rations, a mess kit, maybe a spare shirt if you've managed to hang on to one. The blanket is rolled up and strapped on, adding a few more pounds and another awkward lump against your back. And then the helmet. Steel, cold to the touch, lined with a thin webbing that digs into your scalp. It's supposed to protect you from shrapnel, and maybe it will, but right now it's just adding to the collection of things squeezing, pinching, and weighing you down. When it rains, the water runs right off the rim into your collar. When it's sunny, the inside turns into a little oven. You keep it on anyway, because not wearing it isn't an option unless you feel like inviting trouble. By the time you're fully suited up, you're carrying somewhere between 60 and 80 pounds of gear. The pills make you feel like you can handle it, but that's an illusion. The weight is still there, pressing into your shoulders, dragging at your lower back. You feel every ounce when you start moving, and you'll feel it even more when you stop. It's not just the weight. It's the way everything rubs. The jacket collar chafes your neck. The pack straps dig into the same spots over and over until the skin is tender. The inside of the boots grinds against your heels, raising blisters you won't get a chance to fix before they tear open. Your shirt sticks to your back with sweat within the first hour, and it stays that way until you stop for the night, if you stop at all. And here's the thing, there's no comfortable version of this. You can shift the straps, loosen the belt, roll your shoulders, but the pain just moves somewhere else. You're not trying to get comfortable. You're trying to get to the point where the discomfort becomes background noise, where you stop noticing it unless you think about it too hard. Around you, everyone else is going through the same process, the same grunts and curses as they shrug into packs, tighten straps, check that nothing's loose enough to rattle. Someone's always adjusting their helmet like they might find the magic spot, where it stops feeling like a metal bowl strapped to their head. Someone else is fighting with their pack straps, like they're trying to strangle the thing into submission. Once you're all loaded up, the line forms again. Everyone's standing there like overburdened scarecrows, swaying a little under the combined weight of the gear and the body inside it. The pills hum in your veins. The cold air stings your face, and every strap feels like it's digging deeper by the second. There's no time to think about how ridiculous it is to be dressed like this while walking into whatever's ahead. No time to question whether all of it is necessary. The uniform isn't just clothing, it's the armour and the baggage and the life support system you're expected to carry until you physically can't anymore. When the order comes to move, you feel the whole line lurch forward, the gear shifting and settling against your body. The straps bite, the boots pinch, and the pack sways just enough to throw off your balance for the first dozen steps. But you keep moving, because everyone else is, and because stopping would just make it harder to start again. And that's the trick of it. You don't think about how much you're carrying or how much it hurts. You just walk until you're told to stop. By then the pills will be wearing thin, and you'll be too far from where you started to think about turning back. If the rest of the gear is annoying, the boots are actively plotting against you. They're the part of the uniform you spend the most time in, and the part that seems most determined to destroy you from the ground up. The army calls them service boots, sometimes combat boots, but they could just as accurately be called blister factories. They're made of thick, stiff leather that was never really broken in before being handed to you. Back home, breaking in a pair of boots might mean wearing them around the house for a week. Out here, It means walking 20 miles through mud, gravel, and rubble until the leather gives up resisting and starts to mould to your foot. The problem is, by the time they've softened, your feet are already wrecked. The soles are heavy, nailed true in places, and just flexible enough to bend in the wrong spots. When they're dry, they're slick on anything smoother than dirt. When they're wet, they weigh twice as much and squelch with every step. There's no cushioning, no shock absorption, just your foot slamming down on whatever terrain is underneath. If that's cobblestone, you feel every ridge. If it's gravel, each stone might as well be a spike. Inside, there's no liner beyond whatever socks you're wearing, and those socks are almost never clean or dry. Wet socks bunch up, slide around, and turn the inside of the boot into a little grinding chamber. Blisters start as hot spots, patches of skin that sting and burn, and then they bubble up into pockets of fluid that pop at the worst possible time, leaving raw skin rubbing against rough leather for the rest of the day. You can tape them, you can wrap them, but the second water seeps in, and it always seeps in, it's back to square one. If you're in the mud for days, the boots don't dry. You sleep in them sometimes, not because it's comfortable, but because taking them off means wrestling them back on in the morning while they're stiff and cold. And when they're frozen, it's a special kind of misery. Your toes go numb, your ankles ache, and you have to stamp your feet just to keep the blood moving. Too much of that, and you start worrying about frostbite. Not enough movement, and you start worrying about trench foot. That delightful condition where your skin turns pale and mushy from staying wet too long. The smell is its own weapon. Leather, sweat, damp wool, and whatever you've stepped in all mixing into something that could probably be used to clear a room. You stop noticing it until you take them off, and then it hits like opening a sealed container that should have been thrown out weeks ago. You don't complain because everyone's boots smell the same. Complaining about it would be like complaining about the weather. Pointless and obvious. The laces are another problem. They fray fast, they snap when you pull too hard in the cold, and replacements aren't always easy to get. More than a few guys end up tying their boots with wire, string, or whatever else they can scavenge. That means sharp ends poking your ankles, or knots that never quite sit flat, digging in with every step. Then there's the constant grit. Sand, dirt, little bits of gravel. They find their way in no matter how tight you tie them. You shake it out at the end of the day, and more comes back the next morning like it's been hiding in there overnight. Over time, the grit chews through the socks, and then through your skin, leaving little cuts that are perfect entry points for infection. You don't have time to treat every nick and scratch, so you just keep walking, hoping nothing swells up or starts oozing before you can deal with it. Marching on amphetamines changes the way you feel it. The pills make you move faster, push harder, like you could keep going forever, but your feet know better. The constant pounding starts dull and turns sharp, each step landing just a little harder than the last. The speed keeps you from noticing how bad it's getting until you stop. And then it all hits at once, the burning, the throbbing, the kind of deep ache that feels like it's coming from the bones. Sometimes you swap boots with someone else, thinking maybe their pair will be better. It never is. Their boots are just as warped, just as unforgiving. And now they don't even match the shape of your feet. You take them back as soon as you can, accepting that your own personal enemies at least know you by now. Every soldier has stories about their boots. Times they got stuck in the mud so deep they had to be pulled out. Times the sole came loose mid-march and had to be nailed back on. Times they stepped in something so foul they considered just throwing the boot away. But you never actually ditch them. Out here, bare feet aren't an option. You might hate the boots, but you need them more than they need you. By the time you've been in the field for weeks, your boots have shaped your feet in ways you didn't think possible. Blisters harden into calluses. Your toenails turn black and fall off, and you learn to walk in a way that avoids the worst of the rubbing. You tell yourself you'll burn them the second the war is over, but for now, you lace them up, stamp them into place, and start walking again. Because in the end, it's not about whether the boots fit you, it's about whether you can keep moving in them. And you can. Mostly. The boots are laced, the pack is settled, the straps are biting in all the usual places, and now you're moving. Not in the sense of a casual walk, not even in the sense of a hike. This is marching. An organised shuffle of weighted down bodies moving in the same direction because someone higher up decided that's where you're going. The pill in your system makes your legs feel twitchy, ready, like they want to keep moving whether you want to or not. It's not energy so much as momentum. You've started, and now you have to keep going until someone says otherwise. The first mile isn't bad. That's when the weight hasn't settled in yet, when you can still tell yourself it's just walking. The sound of boots hitting dirt or gravel is steady, almost rhythmic. You hear the creak of webbing, the occasional clink of a canteen against a belt, the scrape of a rifle butt brushing against a pack. The air smells like damp soil, diesel fumes from whatever trucks are up ahead, and cigarette smoke drifting back from someone in front. You keep your eyes on the guys back ahead of you, because looking around too much just makes the distance seem longer. Then the terrain changes. The dirt track turns into loose rock, the loose rock into thick mud, the mud into a road that's more pothole than pavement. Every change means your boots hit the ground a little differently. Every step landing heavier. The pack shifts on your shoulders, pulling you slightly to one side, and you have to adjust without breaking stride. Your knees start to notice the extra weight. Your lower back feels like it's carrying more than its share. Nobody talks much after the first half hour. Early in the day, there's sometimes a little conversation. Complaints about the food, comments about the weather, the occasional joke, but that fades as the miles stretch on. The pills keep you moving, keep you alert, but they don't make this any easier on your body. They just stop you from slowing down enough to feel how bad it's getting. Marching doesn't mean you're going somewhere specific, not in the sense that matters to you. You're not headed toward a landmark you recognise. You're headed toward position, or the front, or where we're needed, all vague enough that they could mean anywhere. You don't know if you'll stop there for the day, or pass straight through. Sometimes you end up circling back to where you started, like the whole thing was just a long, miserable test of endurance. The worst part is the stretches where you can't tell if you're making progress. The scenery doesn't change, just more mud, more trees, more ruined buildings if you're moving through a town. You measure distance in pain now. The ache in your shoulders means you've been going for an hour. The sting in your feet means it's been 2. The numbness in your thighs means you've lost track entirely. Breaks are rare and short. You might get 5 minutes to drink some water, light a cigarette, and shift your pack before someone shouts to move again. If you're lucky, you can sit for those 5 minutes, but often you just lean against something and try to take the weight off one leg at a time. You're still breathing hard when you start walking again, and now your muscles feel heavier than before. The pill keeps your head sharp, but it also messes with your sense of time. Marching for an hour feels like marching for 10 minutes. Marching for 10 minutes feels like marching for a week. The only way to keep from thinking about it too much is to narrow your focus to the next few steps, the next turn, the next guy in line. If you start thinking about how far you've come, or how far you have to go, you'll just end up grinding your teeth harder. The weather can make or break a march, though make is generous. If it's raining, the water runs down your collar and soaks through everything. Your boots fill with it, your socks cling, and every step feels like you're carrying an extra pound on each foot. If it's hot, the air feels like it's pressing down on you. The sweat soaks through your shirt, and the straps rub your skin raw. Cold is its own special punishment. Your hands stiffen, your face burns from the wind, and the numbness in your toes makes you worry about whether they're still there. There's no pacing yourself. You move at the speed of the unit, which means if the guy in front starts moving faster, you do too. If someone falls behind, the pace doesn't change. They just fall further back until someone yells at them to catch up. You don't want to be the one getting yelled at. That's how you end up sprinting with 80 pounds of gear on your back just to get back in line, your heart pounding in your ears, your boots slapping harder than they should. Sometimes you pass civilians, though pass isn't the right word. You go by them, but there's rarely any real interaction. They stare at you, you stare at them, both of you knowing you're not stopping to talk. Sometimes you pass other units, guys coming back from wherever you're going. They look tired in ways you can't quite put into words, faces drawn, uniforms stained in ways you don't want to think about. They don't say much either. They just keep moving in the opposite direction, and you keep moving forward. By the 3rd or 4th hour, you're not thinking about much at all. The pill's high energy hum has settled into a steady background noise in your head. Your feet move on autopilot. Your eyes scan without really processing what they're seeing, and your hands keep your rifle in the same position without conscious effort. You could almost forget you're even holding it until the sling cuts into your shoulder again. It's not about the destination anymore, it's about not stopping. Stopping is when you notice the blisters, the cramps, the grinding ache in your hips. Stopping is when the weight of the pack feels like it's doubled. As long as you're moving, you can pretend it's all just one long step that hasn't ended yet. And so you march. Past trees, past mud, past buildings with their windows blown out. Past the thought that any of this is leading somewhere you want to be. You march because someone said to. You march because the guy in front of you is moving. You march because the pill in your system has your legs convinced they could go forever, even if the rest of you knows better. Eventually, the column slows. You're not sure how long you've been walking. Could be 2 hours, could be 10. But the pace drops and the voices ahead start getting quieter. Someone waves you toward a patch of ground that doesn't look like much. Just mud. Maybe some thin grass. Maybe snow, depending on where you are and what season it's pretending to be today. There's no sign saying, "Welcome to your post," because no one needs to spell it out. This is where you're stopping. and this is where you're digging. The pill in your system keeps your legs from giving out, but it doesn't make the work any less miserable. The entrenching tool, a folding shovel strapped to your gear, comes off your back and into your hands. It's short, it's awkward, and it's been rattling against you all morning. Now it's going to be the only thing between you and lying out in the open. A foxhole isn't a glamorous defensive position. It's a hole in the ground. Sometimes it's just deep enough to crouch in. Sometimes you can actually sit, if you're lucky, or work fast. The point isn't comfort, it's cover. From ground level, a foxhole might keep you out of sight and out of the line of fire. From inside, it's a damp, cramped coffin you're expected to live in for as long as the orders say. You start digging. The ground fights back in whatever way it can. If it's wet, it clings to the blade, heavy and slippery. If it's frozen, every strike bounces back into your hands, rattling your bones. If it's rocky, you're pulling out fist-sized chunks, one at a time, cursing everyone. The whole time, you're bent at the waist or on your knees, the straps of your pack biting into your shoulders, the sweat starting to freeze against your skin if the wind's bad enough. When it's deep enough to at least get your head below ground level, you stop for a second, lean on the shovel, and catch your breath. Then you realise this is only half the work. You still have to line the edges so they don't collapse. Maybe throw some branches over the top for concealment. Maybe figure out where you're putting the water if it rains. A foxhole is only as good as how much water it holds before you start floating in it. Once it's done, which really just means good enough until someone tells you otherwise, you start the process of making it yours. You drag your pack in, set your rifle where you can reach it instantly, and clear a little space to sit without the barrel jabbing you in the ribs. Sitting doesn't make it comfortable. Your knees are still jammed up. Your back is still hunched. And there's always something poking into your hip no matter how many times you shift. If you've got a buddy, you share the space. That means even less room to move, the constant jostling when one of you shifts, and the fun of trying to sleep while another human is breathing 5 inches from your face. You take turns on watch. One sits up, scanning for movement. The other tries to rest in a position that doesn't involve leaning on a shovel handle or balancing on the edge of the hole. The ground becomes your desk, your chair, your bed, and your floor all at once. You eat in here, holding your canteen cup between your knees, trying not to spill on yourself because there's no good way to clean it. You clean your rifle in here, the parts balanced on your lap, or in the mud beside you. You write letters in here, hunching over paper that's already damp from the air. And the mud is everywhere, on your boots, on your jacket, caked under your nails. It clings to the shovel, the ammo pouches, the inside of the foxhole itself. When it rains, it comes up to your ankles. When it's cold, the mud turns to a frozen crust that cracks every time you move. When it's hot, it smells. Always. You get used to the idea that you're living at ground level, that the horizon is a strip you look up at instead of straight ahead. You start to feel like the whole is part of you, your little slice of safety in a place where safety doesn't really exist. You also start to realise that safety is a matter of perspective. Sure, you're harder to see in a foxhole, but if a mortar lands close enough, it's going to fill this space with more than just mud. Still, the orders say this is your post. So you stay, you hunch, you adjust your helmet every few minutes, you check the position of your rifle for the 10th time, you watch the light change as the day moves on, and you wait for whatever's next, because in the army, Office work just means you've got a little dirt around you before it's time to move again. And when the word comes down that you're heading out, you climb out of the hole you just made and leave it behind like it was never yours to begin with, because it wasn't. Weather in this war isn't just background. It's an enemy. It doesn't matter what the forecast would say if anyone bothered to give you one. Out here, it's always the worst possible version of whatever season you're in. Cold isn't just cold. It's bone deep and personal. Heat isn't just heat. It's an oven you can't step out of. Rain isn't refreshing. It's a slow, methodical campaign to soak every inch of you and turn the ground into a swamp that eats boots for breakfast. If you're lucky enough to be somewhere with actual winter, lucky is doing a lot of work. The air slices through every gap in your uniform like it's trying to find skin to freeze. Your breath hangs in front of you in little clouds that look almost peaceful, until you realise it's because your lungs are working overtime just to stay warm. The wind comes in sideways, carrying whatever snow or sleet it can scrape off the nearest field, and you feel it find the exact spot where your jacket collar doesn't quite meet your neck. The foxhole turns into a freezer. The mud freezes into jagged edges that dig into your knees. Your boots stiffen until you have to stomp them just to bend your ankles. You can't light a fire without giving away your position, so your hands turn red, then pale, then numb. The amphetamines make your heart beat faster, but they don't make you warmer. They just make you notice every twitch in your cold, cramped muscles. Then there's summer, which is its own brand of punishment. The heat doesn't just sit on you, it presses down, soaking into the layers of wool and canvas you can't take off. Sweat runs down your back until your shirt is plastered to you, and the straps of your gear rub raw spots into your shoulders. You'd think the breeze would help, but there is no breeze, and if there is, it's hot enough to feel like someone's opening an oven door in your face. And the bugs, mosquitoes, flies, things you can't even name. They find you, they bite you, they crawl into your helmet, and they don't leave. They're drawn to the sweat, the smell, the standing water that collects in every footprint. You swat at them until you're just smearing mud and insect guts on your own skin, and they still come back for more. Rain is the great equalizer. Cold rain turns every surface slick and every foxhole into a puddle. Warm rain just makes the mud looser, clinging to your boots until each step feels like you're hauling a sack of wet cement. The sound of it drumming on your helmet is constant, and eventually you stop noticing until it stops. And then you realise you're even colder without it. Fog is a different kind of problem. It creeps in, blurring the edges of everything. You can't see far enough to feel safe, but you can hear just fine. Every footstep, every distant shout, every metallic clink of gear. It turns the whole world into a waiting room where you know something's coming, but you can't see it yet. And then there's the days when the weather can't make up its mind. Morning frost melts into midday heat. Heat gives way to an afternoon downpour. And by nightfall, you're back to shivering in wet clothes. Every shift means your gear reacts differently. Boots swelling and shrinking, straps loosening and tightening, mud turning to dust and back again. The one constant is that it's never good. The pills don't make the weather better. They just keep you moving through it. In winter, you march faster, your breath coming in sharp bursts, hoping the movement will keep your blood flowing. In summer, you keep going even when your shirt is soaked through and your head feels like it's cooking under the helmet. In the rain, you keep your pace up because standing still just means the water has more time to work its way down your spine. You stop thinking of weather as something separate from the war. It's part of it. Another factor that can ruin your day, wear you down, and make you wish for something that isn't going to happen. You can fight the cold with layers until you run out of layers. You can fight the heat by drinking water until your canteen's empty. You can fight the rain by pretending you're already soaked, which you are, but you can't win. After enough days, you stop hoping for good weather. You start hoping for less bad. You don't pray for sunshine. You pray for dry boots. You don't wish for a breeze. You wish it's not carrying rain. You don't even want warmth. You just want your fingers to work well enough to open a can without dropping it in the mud. And when the weather does give you a break, it feels suspicious, like it's setting you up. Clear skies just mean better visibility for someone who might be looking for you. A nice breeze usually brings the smell of something dead, and a warm afternoon is just an invitation for the bugs to double their efforts. It doesn't matter what season the calendar says it is. Out here, the weather's always against you. The only thing you can do is keep moving, keep working, keep hunching down in the foxhole, and waiting for the next shift in the sky to bring you a new kind of misery. You can get used to a lot out here. Mud, cold, bad food, but you never really get used to the constant company of things that are alive when they shouldn't be. The weather isn't the only thing working against you. The ground itself seems to crawl, and everything you own is just another piece of real estate for something with too many legs. Rats are the most obvious. They're not the timid, skittering kind you see darting away in alleyways back home. These are big, bold, trench-fed monsters with slick fur and eyes that glint even in the dimmest light. They don't wait until night to come out. They run right past your boots in broad daylight, pausing just long enough to decide whether you're a threat or a snack. They've been feeding off everything the war leaves behind. Garbage, spilled rations, bodies, and they're thriving in ways you're not. They get into everything. Your pack, your foxhole, your food tins if you leave them unguarded for more than a few minutes. You wake up to the sound of them gnawing on something just a few feet away, and sometimes it's your gear. They're not scared of you, not anymore. You've thrown things at them, kicked at them, and they just come back later, bolder. And then there are the nights when you're half asleep and feel movement across your legs. You try to tell yourself it's nothing until you hear the claws on fabric. You sit up, shine a little light, and there it is, staring at you like you're the one in its space. You scare it off, but it's back before you've even settled again. The lice are worse in some ways. You can't throw something at lice. You can't stomp them. They're in your clothes, in your hair, in your bedding. You can't see most of them without looking closely, but you feel them constantly. Little bites, little itches that start in one place and seem to spread everywhere. You scratch until the skin is red, then raw, then bleeding, and still they're there. Everyone has them. Officers, grunts, cooks, it doesn't matter. The uniforms aren't washed often enough, and when they are, it's usually in cold water that doesn't kill anything. The seams are perfect hiding places. You can boil the clothes if you've got the means, but the second you put them back on, they're infested again. After a while, you develop the habit of scratching without thinking about it. Shoulder, neck, waistband, cuffs, always somewhere. You see other guys doing the same thing, their hands moving almost in rhythm, all of you part of the same constant losing battle. Fleas make appearances too, hitching rides in the bedding or the straw if you're unlucky enough to be sleeping on it. They're smaller, quicker, harder to catch. You notice them when you wake up with new bites, red and swelling, usually around the ankles or waist. They're just part of the background now, like the mud or the smell of the latrine. And the smell, that's another gift from your unwanted companions. Rats leave droppings everywhere. You smell them before you see them. Lice give off this faint, sour odour when there's enough of them on you, mixed with the smell of unwashed fabric and sweat. It's not the kind of thing you can get rid of. Soap is a rumour out here. Clean water is for drinking, not for scrubbing every inch of yourself just to be reinfested. Some soldiers keep score with the rats, shooting them when they get the chance, tallying the kills on the side of their foxhole. It's something to do, a way to pretend you've got the upper hand. The truth is, you don't. For every rat you kill, there are 10 more waiting, drawn by the food scraps, the warmth, and the sheer amount of death in the air. The lice, you can try to fight with powders if you have them. They smell sharp, chemical, and they sting when you dust them into your shirt. Sometimes they help for a few days. Sometimes the lice just shrug and keep going. You've seen guys burn the seams of their clothes with a lit cigarette trying to kill the eggs. Works until the next time you lean against something infested, which could be anywhere. The worst part is the way you stop reacting. At first, every rat you see gets a reaction. Anger, disgust, maybe a swing with whatever's in your hand. Every itch makes you think about delousing. After a while, you just let it happen. A rat runs past and you don't even flinch. You scratch without breaking conversation. You wake up, feel something crawling, and just brush it off so you can get back to whatever miserable thing you were doing. It's not that you've made peace with them. It's that you don't have the energy to fight something that's never going away. The rats were here before you. The lice were here before you. And both of them will be here after you've moved on, or been moved. You can ignore the rats. You can scratch through the lice without breaking stride. But you can't ignore the sound of artillery. It doesn't matter how long you've been out here. You never really stop reacting to it. You just get better at pretending you're not. Artillery has its own language, and you learn it faster than anything in basic training. There's the distant thump when a gun miles away sends something your direction. Then there's the whistling, that rising and falling sound as the shell cuts through the air, hunting for a place to land. And then there's the impact. Sometimes a sharp crack, sometimes a deep concussive boom that you feel in your teeth. You can tell a lot from the sound. Short whistle, close hit. Long whistle, maybe it's landing further off. A slow, almost lazy arc means it's a mortar. A ripping, high-pitched scream means it's something big and fast. And you've got seconds, maybe less, to get down. The guys who've been out here longer don't even talk about it. They just move when they hear what they need to hear, without hesitation or ceremony. Sometimes it's outgoing, your own side hammering the enemy positions. That's different. It's still loud, still rattles your helmet, but there's no instant dread behind it. Still, the vibration works its way through the ground and into your bones, like the earth itself is shuddering. Even friendly fire can make you grit your teeth and duck instinctively. When it's incoming, that's when you feel it in your gut. You don't even think. You just drop, press yourself into the ground, Curl up in the foxhole if you've got one close enough. Dirt sprays over you, bits of stone and wood, sometimes shrapnel, singing past with a sound you'll never forget. The blast punches the air out of your lungs if it's close enough. Your ears ring, and for a moment you can't tell if you're shouting or if you've gone quiet. After the first few times, you start noticing the silences. A lull between shots doesn't mean it's over. It might mean they're adjusting, waiting, reloading. That pause can be worse than the firing. It leaves you hanging, counting the seconds, wondering if the next one is coming for you. The amphetamines make it worse in a way. They keep your body tense, alert, keyed up so that every unexpected sound snaps your head around. There's no way to ride it out relaxed. You're wired for the duration. It's not always about direct hits. Sometimes it's about what happens nearby. You're sitting in your hole eating from a tin, and 200 yards away a shell hits. You feel it through the ground before the sound reaches you. A column of dirt and smoke rises, and you think about whoever's on the other end of that. If it's your side, you picture the crater left behind. If it's theirs, you picture your name on the next one. And then there's the nights when it's constant. You can't tell one blast from the next. They blur together into a low, endless thunder that rattles through your chest. Sleep's out of the question. Not that you'd get it anyway. You just sit there, knees up, rifle between them, waiting for the pattern to shift. Every once in a while, one lands close enough to make you feel the heat. Not burning, not a direct hit, but that sudden wave of warmth on your face and hands before it's replaced by the cold again. The smell follows, burnt earth, smoke, and that metallic tang of shrapnel tearing through whatever was in its path. You try not to think too hard about what that whatever might be. The longer you're out here, the more you stop flinching at the sound alone. You don't jump at every boom. You don't duck at every whistle. But that's not because you're brave. It's because you've started doing the math in your head without realising it. You know what's close, what's far, and when to throw yourself down versus when to just brace. But no matter how good you get at reading it, there's always the chance you'll get it wrong. And then, when it goes quiet, really quiet, you don't trust it. You sit there, tense, listening for the next shot, waiting for it to pick up again. You know better than to believe the silence will last. Out here, quiet is just the artillery taking a breath before it starts talking to you again. You don't really get lunch out here. You get a point in the day where someone decides there's enough of a lull to put something in your stomach before you pass out or start making mistakes. It's not about time, it's about opportunity. If that opportunity comes at 10 a.m, you eat then. If it doesn't come until dusk, you eat then. And sometimes it comes while the sky is still shaking from the last round of artillery. You learn fast that eating under fire isn't dramatic. There's no heroic scene where you grit your teeth and chew through an explosion. It's just practicality. You're not going to waste the only chance you've got to eat because the air is making noise. You're already sitting low, already keeping your head down. Might as well open the tin. Rations again. Always rations. Maybe K rations if you're lucky. Maybe a C ration can have stew, hash, or something the label calls meat and beans, even though the ratio is more like fat and liquid. You open it with a can opener, if you've still got one, or you just jam the point of your knife into the lid and pry until it gives. The metal edge is sharp enough to cut you, but you've done this so many times you barely notice anymore. The smell hits first, greasy, salty and metallic from the can. It mixes with the dirt and the smoke from the last blast. So you're not really sure what's coming from the food and what's coming from the world around you. You eat anyway because it's calories, and calories are the difference between marching and collapsing. You take a bite, then glance up at the sky like you're trying to see if the next shell has your name on it. The pills in your system make your hand steady, even if the ground shakes now and then. Sometimes you have to stop mid-chew because the noise is too close. An instinct makes you freeze. You don't drop the food, you just hold it there until the sound passes and you go back to chewing. If you've got bread, it's hard enough to chip a tooth on. If you've got crackers, they're dry enough to make your mouth feel like it's packed with cotton. You chase each bite with water from your canteen, which tastes faintly of whatever it was cleaned with last. Chlorine, iodine, or just the stale tang of metal. Cigarettes are part of lunch whether you want them or not. They come in the ration packs, and they're as much a habit as the eating itself. You light one if you can, without giving yourself away, cupping the flame against the wind, and the eyes watching from somewhere beyond the tree line. The first drag burns in the back of your throat, cuts through the taste of whatever you just swallowed, and reminds you that for all the noise, you're still here. If you're in a foxhole, you keep the food low so nothing shiny catches the light. If you're behind cover, you keep your back to it and your head down. If you're in the open, you eat fast. No savouring, no talking. Just bite, chew, swallow, repeat. The less time you spend with your attention split, the better. Sometimes the noise is far enough off that you can almost pretend you're not in the middle of it. You talk to the guy next to you about nothing. Home, baseball, the weather. Sometimes you sit in silence, both of you just focused on getting it done. Then a closer shell snaps you out of whatever you were pretending, and you remember exactly where you are. There's no cleaning up after lunch. You crush the can, shove it in your pack, or toss it into the mud. You stamp out the cigarette, burying the ember so it doesn't give you away. And you pick up your rifle, because lunch isn't a break. It's just a smaller part of the same day. The moment you're done chewing, you're back to scanning the horizon, listening for that whistle, waiting for someone to shout the next order. Some days, you get to finish the whole meal before moving. Other days, you're halfway through and someone yells, "Let's go," and you're walking with a half-empty can in one hand and your rifle in the other, shoveling food into your mouth between steps. The heat from the pill keeps you going. The food keeps you from tipping over. That's the deal. And when the shells start up again while you're still chewing, you just keep chewing. Not because you're fearless, but because if you stop now, you might not get another chance for the rest of the day. Cleanliness is a rumour out here, something that exists in memory, in stories from home, in the pages of the little handbook they gave you back at training. In the field, hygiene isn't a priority, it's a casualty. It dies quietly, usually within the first week you're living in a foxhole, or marching from one muddy nowhere to another. Bathing isn't something you do anymore. It's something you hear other people talking about in letters from home. The closest you get is splashing some water on your face from your canteen if you can spare it, and even that feels extravagant. Rivers, ponds, lakes, they're out there, but they're either ice cold, full of things you'd rather not think about, or in places where standing out in the open long enough to strip down is a good way to get shot. You smell yourself before anyone else does, which is saying something, because everyone smells. Sweat, mud, gun oil, whatever you've stepped in lately, it all blends into a permanent layer on your skin. Your uniform soaks it up, and since you don't have a spare to swap into, it just builds day after day. The fabric stiffens, the seams darken, and the smell turns into something that feels like it's part of the air around you. Shaving is optional if your officer's not picky, but even when it's required, it's more about appearance than comfort. You drag a dull razor over cold, dry skin, maybe dipping it in canteen water first if you're feeling fancy. There's no cream, no mirror, just the hope you're not leaving a streak of blood down your neck. The guys who can grow a decent beard often just give up. It's less painful than carving your own face open with bad equipment. Teeth? You can forget about a twice-a-day routine. Toothbrushes exist in theory, and maybe you've still got one stuffed somewhere in your pack. But when you're too tired to take off your boots before sleeping, brushing your teeth isn't going to make the list. Some guys carry little tins of tooth powder or baking soda, but it's rare anyone uses them regularly. You might swish some water around your mouth, but that's more about getting the taste of canned meat out than about hygiene. The result is predictable. Breath that could strip paint, teeth stained from coffee, cigarettes, and whatever passed for breakfast. Cavities aren't your biggest concern, they take time to kill you. The infections that start from a cut in your gums or a cracked tooth, those can get serious quick. But there's no dentist following you around, and medical attention is a phrase that usually means keep moving until it's bad enough to stop you. Hands are never clean. You're digging, carrying, loading, and touching things you probably shouldn't be touching. Dirt packs under your nails, grease sticks to your palms, and there's always some new stain you can't identify. Soap is a rare luxury, and when you do get it, you guard it like gold. Even then, washing your hands means losing heat in the winter, or risking cracked skin that just makes them worse. Your feet are a whole separate nightmare. Between the boots, the wet socks, and the constant marching, they're in a state you wouldn't want to show anyone. Toenails turn black and fall off. Skin cracks. Blisters pop and turn into raw spots that never heal because you're still walking on them every day. You try to change socks when you can, but when you can usually means when the last pair rots off your feet. And there's no escaping the filth because you're living in it. Your foxhole is mud and damp and whatever the last guy left behind. Your bedding, if you even have bedding, is as dirty as your clothes. You drop your gear in it, you drop yourself in it, and it sticks to you in layers. The lice are already in your seams. The rats are already sniffing around, so you start to wonder what the point of washing really is. The smell, the grime, the itching, it all blends into the background. You stop noticing until you think about it too hard. Then you remember what it was like to be clean, to feel fresh fabric against your skin, to run a hand through your hair without feeling grit. That memory's dangerous. It makes you want something you're not going to get here. So you push it down, the same way you push down the thought of a hot shower or a clean shave. You rub at your neck when it itches, scratch your scalp when the lice get too bold, swish water in your mouth when you can't stand the taste anymore. And you tell yourself it's fine, because everyone else is just as filthy as you are. Out here, hygiene isn't about feeling good, it's about staying functional. Everything else can wait until there's running water and a door you can close. Getting hurt out here doesn't mean you're suddenly surrounded by white coats and clean instruments. There's no bright room with a bed and a nurse leaning over you. Out here, medical help means whatever can be done in the mud, under fire, with whatever supplies are left in somebody's bag. The first line of care is you, or the guy next to you. If you take a hit, you're hoping someone sees it happen, because if you go down without anyone noticing, there's a chance you'll stay there. Field dressings are part of your kit. A little packet of gauze and bandage you're expected to slap on yourself or hand to someone who can. There's no sterilisation, no precision. You press it down, you tie it off, you keep moving. If it's bad enough to stop you from walking or holding a rifle, then you're in the hands of a medic. They're trained, sure, but trained doesn't mean they've got what they need. They work with what they can carry on their backs. Morphine syringes, sulphur powder, more bandages, maybe a pair of scissors. They don't have the luxury of taking their time. You get patched up fast, bleeding stopped, wound wrapped, maybe a shot of morphine if it's bad, and then you're either sent back into line or sent back toward the aid station. Amphetamines throw a wrench into the whole process. They don't make you invincible, but they do a good job of dulling the body's insistence that you stop. You can be bleeding and still feel wired enough to keep going. Pain feels muted until it doesn't, until the adrenaline and the speed wear off, and then it crashes in all at once. By then, you're either on your way to real treatment or too far gone to notice the difference. The aid station is the next step up, but don't imagine a hospital. Picture a tent, or a half-ruined building, or any place with enough cover to keep shells from landing directly on the wounded inside. There are cots if you're lucky, stretchers if you're not. The smell hits you before you get in. Blood, sweat, disinfectant if they've got it, and the heavy metallic tang of things that didn't survive the trip. Doctors here are doing triage, not miracles. They decide in seconds whether you can be patched up quickly, need to be sent further back, or aren't going to make it. You don't get bedside manner. You get hands moving fast, voices calling for supplies, someone leaning over you with a needle or a saw, depending on the problem. You look at the guy on the cot next to you and try not to think about why they've covered his face. If you're sick instead of injured, the options are even more limited. Cough? Here's some aspirin. Stomach problems? Maybe they've got salts or chalky powder for that. Infection? If there's penicillin around, you're in luck. If not, it's sulphur and a prayer. Fevers are treated with rest, which means lying in a tent where everyone else is coughing too, and where the air is as thick with flies as it is with heat. There's no time for full recovery. If you're walking and breathing, you're probably going back to your unit. Broken bones get splints, deep cuts get stitches that might not hold if you move too much, and burns get whatever gauze is left. You're not meant to heal here. You're meant to be kept functional long enough to be useful again. The bad cases get evacuated further back, but even that's a gamble. The trucks and ambulances have to make it through shelling, bad roads, and all the other hazards between you and a proper hospital. Plenty of guys die on the way. Not because the doctors didn't know what to do, but because the war doesn't wait for anyone to get better. And for every injury you can see, there are the ones you can't. Shaking hands that don't stop, eyes that dart at every sound, nightmares that don't let you sleep even when you get the chance. Out here, no one's diagnosing battle fatigue in the middle of the fight. They just hand you more pills, tell you to keep moving, and hope you can hang on until someone else takes your place. Medical help isn't about comfort. It's about keeping you alive just long enough to go back and get hurt again. And you accept it because the alternative is being left in the mud with no one coming. There's a ritual to writing home. It doesn't matter how filthy you are, how loud the artillery is in the distance, or how little you have to say. You sit down when you can, pull out the crumpled paper, and try to make the words behave. Not because you think the letter will get there quickly, and not even because you think it will get there at all, but because it's one of the last things that makes you feel like a person instead of a moving target. The paper is usually creased, damp around the edges, maybe stained from something you can't identify. The pencil stub is dull and splintered. Ink pens exist, but out here, they're more trouble than they're worth. Too easy to leak or freeze or break. You use what you have. The first line is always the hardest. You know you can't write about most of what's happening. The censors will black out anything that even hints at where you are, what you're doing, or who you're doing it with. So you stick to safe topics, the weather, the food, the guys in your unit. You mention names, but not details. You say you're fine even when you're not, especially when you're not. The problem is, even the safe topics aren't really safe. How do you talk about the weather without mentioning the mud that eats boots, or the heat that turns your water warm before you can drink it? How do you talk about the guys without mentioning the ones who aren't there anymore? So you dodge, you gloss, you write sentences that feel hollow but at least keep the pen moving. Some guys write in a kind of code, slipped in phrases or little jokes only the person at home would understand. A certain nickname, a reference to a place back home, a remember when that's supposed to mean more than the words say. It's a way to smuggle a piece of the real story past the censor stamp without actually breaking the rules. And then there are the letters you don't send. You write them in the same slow, careful hand, filling the page with the truth you can't put in the real ones. You talk about the noise, the smell, the faces you can't get rid of when you close your eyes. You write about the fear that comes and goes like a tide, about the boredom that's somehow worse, about the little things you're starting to forget, how your own bed feels, how quiet sounds. You fold those letters up and stick them in your pack, meaning to burn them later. Some guys keep them as a kind of diary, adding to the stack until it's thick enough to need its own pouch. Some toss them into the fire the moment they're finished, watching the paper curl and blacken until the words disappear. There's something satisfying about that. Like you've gotten the weight out of your head without the risk of someone else carrying it. Mail call is its own kind of torture. You stand there while the names are read, waiting to hear yours. Sometimes it comes, and you've got an envelope soft from being handled too much, the handwriting instantly familiar. You read it twice, 3 times, fold it up and tuck it somewhere you can reach easily. Other times your name doesn't come up at all, and you tell yourself it's because the mail's slow, not because they've forgotten to write. When you do get a letter, you answer it as soon as you can. It doesn't matter if you've been marching all day, or if the ground is shaking from shelling. You pull out the paper and start writing back. The words don't have to be perfect. They just have to be there. You send them out knowing it could be weeks before they're read, months even, and knowing that by the time they're opened, half of what you wrote won't be true anymore. The amphetamines don't help with writing. They make your hand jittery, your letters sharp and uneven. You end up with whole lines that look like they're slanted uphill. Sometimes you have to stop and breathe just to make the words legible. But they also keep you awake long enough to finish, even when your eyes are burning and your body's telling you to shut down. The hardest part is deciding what not to say. You want to be honest, but you also want them to sleep at night. You want to tell them you're proud to be here, but you also want them to know it's not what the posters made it out to be. You want them to understand without having to see. So you write around the truth and hope the spaces between the sentences will tell the rest. And then you fold it up, seal it, and hand it off when the next mailbag goes out. If it makes it, good. If it doesn't, you'll never know. Out here, letters aren't a conversation. They're a gamble. And sometimes it's easier to keep the real words to yourself. You don't need to be asleep to have nightmares out here. In fact, you barely sleep at all. So most of them happen while your eyes are wide open. It's not just fear, though there's plenty of that. It's the way your mind starts playing tricks on you when you're running on amphetamines, exhaustion, and a constant background noise of artillery and shouting. Your body's awake. Your pulse is steady but fast. Your legs can still move. Your hands can still work the rifle. But your head is somewhere else, half in the present, half in a loop of things you wish you could stop seeing. It's like being stuck between two reels of film. One's showing what's right in front of you, the other's showing something you'd rather forget, and they keep flickering over each other until you're not sure which one's real. It starts with little things. A shadow that looks too much like a figure in the distance. The sound of boots behind you when you know you're alone. The way a branch moves when there's no wind. You glance over, ready for trouble, and it's nothing. At least you think it's nothing. The problem is, after a while, the nothing starts to feel just as dangerous as the things that are actually there. The amphetamines keep you wired, but they also stretch you thin. Your thoughts move too fast, your eyes dart too much, and your brain starts filling in the blanks before reality can catch up. You see faces in the mud. You hear voices in the hiss of rain. You smell smoke where there isn't any. It's not like the dreams you had before the war. It's sharper, louder, and harder to shake off, because you never actually wake up from it. And then there are the real memories, the ones from earlier in the day, earlier in the week, earlier in the war. They don't wait for sleep to show up. They just step in whenever there's a quiet moment. The body you passed on the road, the sound it made when you moved it out of the way. The guy you were talking to this morning who's not talking anymore. The time you were certain you weren't going to make it through the next minute, and somehow you did. Those play over and over, uninvited, until you've memorized every detail. It's worse when you're alone, on guard duty, or just waiting for orders. Your eyes keep moving, scanning, but your mind drifts. You think you hear something, maybe a twig snapping, maybe a shell in the distance, and your heart jumps. You grip the rifle tighter, try to focus, and then you realise you've been holding your breath for 30 seconds, staring into the dark like it's staring back. Other guys don't talk about it much. You see it in them though, the way someone's gaze stays locked a little too long on nothing, the way they flinch at sounds that don't make anyone else flinch. Sometimes they snap out of it with a laugh, pretending they were just zoning out. Sometimes they don't. You start to notice when someone's not really here anymore, even if they're still standing next to you. When you do sleep, it's no better. The dreams are loud, fast, and cut short by someone shaking you awake, or by a blast close enough to set your teeth on edge. You open your eyes and you're still in the middle of it. There's no moment of confusion where you wonder where you are. You know exactly where you are, and you know it's not going to let you rest. The pills don't stop it. They just make it stranger. Colours too bright, edges too sharp, everything moving too quick. The line between what happened and what you think happened gets thinner until it feels like it could snap at any second. You wonder if this is just how it's going to be from now on, alert enough to keep moving, but never clear enough to feel steady. And you keep going, because that's what the day demands. You check your gear, you follow the column, you dig the next hole. But in the back of your head, the reel keeps running, and it doesn't care if your eyes are open or closed. You stop counting days out here, not because you don't want to, but because they stop behaving like days. There's no real start, no real end, just a string of hours tied together by the same noises, the same work, the same sky changing colours without meaning anything. Morning, afternoon, night. They're just different shades of the same routine. The watch on your wrist says it's moving forward, but it feels like it's lying. You wake up, if you can even call it waking up, because someone tells you it's your turn to be up. You do the work in front of you, and when that's done, you move to whatever's next. You eat when someone hands you food, drink when you remember to, rest when you can. The sun rises and sets somewhere over your shoulder, and you barely notice until someone else points it out. The amphetamines keep you on your feet, but they also stretch time until it's paper thin. You're not tired enough to sleep, not alert enough to feel sharp. You just exist in a constant state of being on, like a light bulb that never gets switched off. It makes the hours blur, but not in a way that's merciful. More like in a way that makes you forget whether something happened today or 3 days ago. The work itself doesn't change much. Digging, marching, cleaning your weapon, hauling supplies, standing watch, moving again. Even the things that are supposed to break the monotony, like a firefight, just fold into the same rhythm. You fire, you move, you reload, you fire again. Then you're back to the same tasks as if nothing happened. The adrenaline spikes and drops, but the overall pace stays the same. Meals don't break it up either. Breakfast might as well be lunch. Lunch might as well be dinner. Dinner might as well be another breakfast. It's the same rations, the same metallic taste, the same lukewarm water. Cigarettes fill the gaps between them, but even those feel less like a treat and more like another box to check off in the cycle. The only thing that marks time clearly is loss. You remember the day someone didn't come back. You remember when a position changed hands, or when a town got flattened. Those moments stick, not because they break the routine, but because they carve themselves into it so deep that you can't walk through the same spot without thinking of them. Everything else fades together. Sometimes you try to think back to the first day you got here. You remember the trip, the newness of it all, the way every sound and smell felt important. Now it's just noise and odour, all of it mixing into the same constant background. You don't remember your last real conversation, your last real laugh. You just remember the tasks: clean the rifle, fill the canteen, check the pack, move. Nights don't reset anything. You'd think darkness would make the world feel different, but out here it's just another version of the same shift. You keep moving if there's somewhere to be. You keep watch if there's not. Sometimes you sit in the Foxhole, listening to the distant gunfire, and realise you could be doing the exact same thing 12 hours from now, and it wouldn't feel strange at all. Even sleep doesn't feel like an ending. It's just a pause. You lie down where you can, in whatever position you can manage, and you close your eyes. Then someone shakes you awake, and you pick up exactly where you left off, like you were never really gone. The pills make sure you can keep that going for days if someone asks you to, weeks even, but it's not free. You feel it in your hands, in your eyes, in the way your mind starts slipping when you're staring too long at nothing. After a while, you stop asking how much longer this will go on, not because you don't care, but because there's no way to measure it. Tomorrow will look like today. Yesterday looked like tomorrow. The only real difference is whether you make it through both. The pills don't last forever. You take them like you take everything else out here, because someone told you to, because it keeps you going, because not taking them feels like giving up. But eventually, no matter how strong they are, they wear off. And when they do, it's like someone turned gravity up a notch. It doesn't happen all at once. First, your focus starts to slip. You're still moving, still following orders, but your eyes keep wanting to close between blinks. The edges of things get blurry. You catch yourself staring at nothing and have to shake your head to get back to the present. Then the aches set in, the ones the pills have been covering up. Knees, back, shoulders, hands. You feel every step you've taken in the last 3 days all at once. Your body remembers everything you've been putting it through. The cold you ignored, the hunger you worked past, the weight you carried without thinking about it. It all comes back like a debt you can't avoid paying. Your legs feel heavier. Your boots feel tighter. Even breathing starts to feel like work. The crash doesn't just hit your muscles. It hits your head too. The speed that kept your mind sharp enough to watch every shadow now leaves you fogged over. You miss things. Small details at first, like a sound in the distance or the movement of someone's hand. Then bigger things. Orders don't stick as well. Directions get muddled. You walk right past something important without noticing until someone yells at you to turn around. It makes you irritable. Not angry in a way you can control. More like short-tempered with everything. The guy next to you breathing too loud. The strap on your pack digging into your shoulder. The tin of rations that won't open on the first try. Every little thing feels like it's aimed at you personally. You snap at people you wouldn't normally snap at. And they do the same to you, because half the unit's crashing at the same time. The worst part is when it happens in the middle of something you can't stop. You could be on watch, your head jerking forward as you fight to stay awake, knowing that 1 second too long with your eyes shut could cost someone their life. You could be marching, each step slower than the last, the line pulling away from you while your boots drag through the mud. You could be under fire, trying to reload with fingers that suddenly feel too heavy to move. The officers notice. They know what it means when too many men are moving slower, missing cues, looking glassy-eyed. Sometimes that means more pills get handed out before the crash gets too deep. Sometimes it means you just have to ride it out, because the supply is running low. Or because there's no point dosing you if you're about to get a couple hours to rest. Rest isn't always the solution though. You can lie down after a crash and still not sleep. Your body's exhausted, but your brain's stuck in the same loop it's been in for days. You shift around trying to get comfortable, but the aches are too sharp. The cold is too deep. and every noise keeps snapping you back awake. It's not restful, it's just lying still until someone tells you to get up again. When you do finally sleep, it's the kind of heavy, dreamless drop that makes it hard to wake up. You hear someone calling your name, but it takes a moment to remember where you are, what you're doing. You sit up slow, and for the first few minutes you're moving like you're underwater. That's dangerous out here, but it's part of the cycle. The crash always ends the same way, with another pill, another march, another push forward. You know it's coming the moment you swallow it. You know that you'll ride the wave up again. You'll move faster, see clearer, hear sharper, and you know you'll pay for it later. Out here, later just doesn't matter as much as right now. If you make it home, and that's still an if, no matter how many days you've survived, you don't walk through the door and leave this behind. You carry it in with you. The mud, the smell, the noise. They're not on your uniform anymore, but they're in your head and they stay there. At first, people are just happy to see you. They shake your hand, hug you, tell you how proud they are. They ask you about the trip, the weather, the food. Safe questions. The kind you can answer without tripping over the truth. You tell them it was fine. You had what you needed. You're glad to be back. You don't tell them that you still keep scanning the corners of the room, or that you can't stop looking for exits. You notice how clean everything is, how quiet. Even the busy streets back home sound muted compared to the front. You go to bed and the silence feels wrong. You wait for the whistle, the crack, the sound of boots outside your door. When it doesn't come, you lie there wondering what you missed. The pills follow you too. Not the actual supply. They're gone once you're out. But the rhythm they forced on you doesn't fade right away. You're used to being on all the time. You're used to pushing through exhaustion, to ignoring pain, to staying awake because it's safer than sleeping. Without the pills, you feel slow. Your limbs feel heavy, your brain feels thick, and you start drinking coffee like it's water just to get a fraction of that old edge back. The crashes hit harder now because there's nothing forcing you up again. You'll have days where you can't get out of bed, where your hands shake just holding a cup, where you don't want to talk to anyone. You'll tell people you're tired, but it's not that kind of tired. It's the kind that sits in your bones and doesn't care how much you rest. You try to go back to normal life, but normal doesn't fit anymore. Crowds make you tense. Sudden noises make your stomach drop. Someone drops a tray in a diner, and you're already halfway to the floor, before you realise what you're doing. You keep your back to the wall without thinking about it. You watch people's hands when they talk. You don't mean to, but it's automatic now. The nightmares are still there. Sometimes you wake up sweating. Sometimes you wake up swinging. You keep telling yourself they'll fade with time. Some do. Most don't. They just change shape. The faces get less clear. The places blur together. But the feeling stays sharp. You don't talk about it because you've seen the way people's eyes change when you do. They nod. They say they understand. But they don't. Not really. And even if you never say it out loud, you know you left pieces of yourself back there. Not just the energy or the time, but the version of you that didn't live with the smell of gunpowder in your nose and the sound of shells in your ears. That person's gone, and what's left is someone who knows exactly how long a day can stretch when it doesn't end, and exactly how fast a life can stop when it does. You hear people talk about the war like it's a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. You nod along, but you know better. The war doesn't end when you come home. It just changes addresses. And you'll keep living with it, the same way you kept marching back then. Because you don't get to stop. You just keep going. And that's it. That's the whole miserable stretch. From the moment you wake up in a hole in the ground to the moment you're back home pretending none of it followed you. It's not the kind of story that has a twist ending or some uplifting moral. It's just what it was. Long, loud, dirty, and fueled by pills that kept you upright at the cost of everything else. If you've made it this far, you already know it wasn't about glory. It wasn't about being fearless or heroic. It was about getting through the next hour, and then the next, until enough of them passed that someone decided you were done. Whether that happened because the war ended, or because you just weren't standing anymore, didn't really change the fact that the days out there never stopped feeling the same. You might think, sitting here now, that you'd do it differently if you had the choice. Maybe you'd take fewer pills. Maybe you'd rest more. Maybe you'd find a way to hang on to a little more of yourself. But the truth is, out there, the choice wasn't really yours. You kept moving because the alternative wasn't an option. And once you start living like that, it's not something you turn off just because the uniforms and the gun go away. So maybe the best you can do is keep telling it like it was. No polishing, no trimming the edges, no pretending it was something it wasn't. Just the truth. The long, drawn-out, unglamorous truth. Because if nothing else, at least you can say you saw it all for what it really was, and you didn't look away.